Welcome to the Fearless Happiness Podcast, where we showcase phenomenal individuals who have overcome serious traumas, life obstacles, and challenges to find their own path to fearless happiness. Listen as Max Naist invites guests from all around the world to share their experiences and spread strength, hope, and faith. This is the Fearless Happiness Podcast, and this is Max Naist.
All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast coming back to you again today with another special and amazing guest. I have Matt Grace joining me today. But what I like to do, Matt, is have you introduce yourself to my audience, like who you are, what it is you do, and then you and I like to say, are going to rock and roll.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your podcast. Anytime I get a chance to talk about my story or what I'm doing, it's really a gift and an honor. And I look at it as kind of my responsibility as well. So kind of how this thing started, I wrote a book. Actually, I used to work in the addiction space. I started out as a recovery mentor where I would fly people to and from treatment. I mean, you understand that business as a sober coach.
Yep.
Then I started my own consulting business. I had a business partner who handled the therapeutic side for the family stuff, and then I handled the one-on-one recovery stuff. And it just got to the point where, as I'm sure you understand, that a lot of the families were the biggest impediment to their whoever was trying to recover. And so we would sign people to a 1-year contract. So it's not a 9-to-5 job, right? It's
Right.
putting out a lot of fires. They're calling me at Sunday at 2 a.m. sometimes. And,
Right.
you're beholden to the family.
Right.
And so I just got burnt out and I didn't have a balance in my life. And I think balance is important.
Absolutely.
And so then one of the families that I helped, was doing sales for quite some time. And he said, why are you doing that? He said, you were so good at working in recovery. He's like, that's where you belong. And so I kind of thought to myself, what can I do to try to give something back without being pulled in 7 days a week?
Right.
And so I decided to write a book. And the book is called God Doesn't Relapse.
I love that. I love that.
And the subtitle is Sex, Drugs, and the Life That Almost Killed Me. And because I also talk about sex addiction, which doesn't it gets kind of swept under the rug.
Very much
And
so.
why did I write the book? So the book I wrote because there's 3 themes. One is enabling. And I use my family as, particularly my father, as my greatest enabler. I call him the Mariano Rivera of enabling. The second one is what I'm most passionate about is service or volunteer work.
Right.
And how that's changed my life and impacted my life at certain times of my sobriety, right? Like even at 11 years when I lost my father, I started over like a newcomer and started just the one thing that pulled me out of my depression and my sadness was volunteer work.
Yeah.
And I know that you can relate to that. So, and then the
Absolutely.
third thing is, the elephant in the room, right? God.
Right.
And this country has moved more secular since the 1930s. And so the book is not religious whatsoever, even though I grew up extremely religious. But as you know, getting sober, I had to let go of a lot of old ideas.
Right.
And so it's just really, I guess one of my mission statements is that service can be your higher power. Like if you're really struggling with the concept of God, whether you're an atheist or an agnostic,
Right.
if you just roll up your sleeves and it doesn't even have to be correlated with any 12-step program, right? Because I'm getting a lot of now that I'm kind of entering this online stuff, I'm getting it, attacked, which is fine. I love the haters.
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
I'm with you.
So I'm just so passionate about service and what God has done for my life. And when I say the word God, I have no idea what that is. I
Right.
just know that when I got on my knees for the first time and I asked God to spare my life. It was October 3rd, 2004, 6:30 in the morning. And I got on my knees and I said, God, if you don't show yourself, I'm going to kill myself. And I had a white light spiritual experience that lasted 25 minutes and the obsession was gone instantly. Now, as you know, most people don't have that kind of awakening. And so I share a lot of other people's stories who I'm motivated by and have a lot of respect for. So it's not a memoir just about me.
Right.
I share a lot of other people's stories who've faced the direst of consequences and have come out on the other side, but they had some kind of belief in something.
Right.
So the title can be kind of, oh, God, he's already mentioning God, but I talk about multiple pathways to a relationship with a higher power. And
Right. Well, Matt, I love that, right? Because I'm like you, though. I have this, God intervened so many times, whether I noticed it or not, right? And I always like to tell the audience this, Matt and I aren't going to, we're not pushing any certain belief, like whatever that is for you.
Mhm.
For us, it's God, right? And our stories, right? Which led us to that point. And especially like Matt's, we have similar stories. We were talking before the podcast here, but what I like to do, Matt, Matt wrote a book, so let's talk about those things, those challenges, right? Like your addiction, like talk about some of the things that have shaped who you are, even those awful things that you and I, really don't like to talk about anymore, right? Because it's in the past, but it's the things that brought us to where we are today. So I know my audience, I'm excited to hear about your journey and some of those things. And then we'll dive into your book and some of those stories you talk about.
so I'll talk about my childhood a little bit because it is so unique for someone who grew up privileged like myself. I was expelled from 2 preschools.
You started off early, huh?
Life did not start well for me.
Okay.
And then by the time I got to kindergarten, I was a handful. And the school social worker told my parents by the time I was 6 years old that they were concerned I would turn out to be a criminal. And so, back in the 80s, in the late 70s, early 80s, my parents did the best that they could and tried to get me the help that they could, but there was a lot of stuff that went undiagnosed and missed. But one of the things that's important, and as a matter of fact, in my book, I put a paragraph, a disclaimer that before the book starts that said, if some of the content that you're going to read might be difficult to read about, because I want the reader not to stop reading the book.
Right.
And so when I was a kid, I was cruel. I was cruel to other kids. I was a bully. Out of all the things that I've done, and this is before my addiction, that's what I have the most regret about.
Right.
Because, and what people don't understand is that, therapy or medication was only going to take me so far, that I knew from an early age that my spirit was broken. I just didn't know how to put that into words as a, 6, 7, 8-year-old kid.
Right.
So, I was sent to a therapist, starting at the age of 9, and I saw him 3 nights a week for 9 years. And he came up with a very disturbing diagnosis, it was called, an Oedipal complex. And at 9 years old, he told me that I wanted to have sex with my mom and castrate my father. And that was what my problem was.
So wait. Your therapist told you that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so as you can imagine, as a 9-year-old kid, how to process something like that.
Right.
So our first session, I started physically assaulting him. And I assaulted him 3 nights a week for the first 4 years. And I didn't get very far because he was a big guy and I was a kid.
Right.
So I would kick him, punch him, throw toys at him. And then he would put me in a sleeper hold and, then say, if you stop, if I let go, are you going to stop? And so I didn't know, as a 9-year-old boy, I thought that was what therapy was. because he never mentioned anything to my parents.
Wow.
And so, um, you would think that today, if a kid tried to assault a therapist like that, it would be over,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Like, it's a different world today. So my behavior got worse. I started, um, in 7th grade. I'll just do a culmination of the I don't have time for every story, but I
Right.
almost killed someone on the expressway. I threw something out of a school bus on a field trip, and it cracked this lady's windshield on the expressway.
Oh, wow.
And they uh, followed the bus to the off ramp and and cornered the bus in. And that was the first time that I learned that privilege comes. You always hear powerless, but in my story, coming from a place of privilege, I came from power because my father paid her $25,000 to not press charges.
Oh, wow.
And so instead, he arranged for me to sit in juvenile court because one of his circuit court judges was his friend. And I sat in court all day and watched other kids get sent to juvenile hall. And I just sat there, and there was no lesson learned, right? And then
Right.
eventually my father, um, Detroit was a world-class city at one point, but then by this time it was a tough place. And he drove at 13, drove me around the inner city and said, at some point they're going to take you away from me, and I don't know what else I can do for you.
Right.
So, yeah, my childhood was challenging. You could say traumatic, right? I mean,
Right.
9 years with the same therapist. Um, then I started sleeping throughout the sessions for months, where he wouldn't say anything. So I would
Right.
just sleep for months at a time. Finally, he told my father what I was doing, and so my father came in to the sessions, and the two of them just grilled me with questions as a 14-year-old kid.
Right.
And I just sat there, and one of the lines in my book I said is I got from a Green Day song. I said, "The clock is laughing in my face," right?
Right.
Because it's like, I can't get me the heck out of here. Um, so should I talk about the addiction part now?
I, whatever you think I think you should, right? So give the
Yeah.
audience a kind of an idea of what you've gone through, right? Because
So
you know what I mean? Like, did that
yeah,
therapist ever tell your dad that he was putting you in a, chokehold and
no,
holding? Of course not, right?
no.
So I'm
Well,
surprised.
I'm sorry, just because I have a thought.
Right.
Then I started. So I started using drugs when I was 16. But back up, actually, real quickly. My father introduced me to prostitution, strippers, pornography, and gambling when I was 16.
Did he
And
think that was going to help you or something?
I think he just wanted to. I think So one of the things that I talk about in my book is enabling.
Right.
And I say that my dad was my best friend, but he was never my father.
Gotcha.
Those are two very separate things.
Absolutely.
So God rest his soul, but I use a lot of examples in the book of what I don't want them to follow.
Right.
And you'd be surprised how many men still want to buy their kids escorts.
Wow.
So uh, the first time I ever got high, my best friend, who's dead, died from this disease.
Okay.
He crushed a pill of Ritalin and said, "Come over here and snort this." And that was it. I said, "Oh my God, this is the feeling I've been looking for my whole life." And if I could bottle that feeling,
Right.
anyone who likes amphetamines will understand what that's like. So it was just such an incredible feeling.
Right.
And from 16 to 29, it was off the rails. It impacted my life significantly. I failed out of 4 schools. Um, was arrested several times. I started committing felonies, but by the grace of God, that I never got arrested for. I got involved with the wrong crowd, breaking into people's homes. I got into identity theft, and I, again, there's something out there that wanted to see me succeed because, in spite of myself, I'm still here. So, but the interesting thing is when I started snorting Ritalin, uh, I had a therapy session and I told my therapist, I said, I found the best thing I've ever experienced. I crushed a pill in our session and snorted it in front of him. right, as a minor, and he
Right.
never told my parents. And I'm pretty sure that he probably had a, he should have, right? I'm sure he was obligated to.
Yeah.
That just goes to show you how lost I got in the shuffle.
Right.
Um, so from Ritalin to crystal meth, so from 16 to 18, it went from Ritalin to meth. When I started doing meth, I started, as I mentioned when we were before the podcast started, I had a psychotic break, and my friends had to sit on me because I thought people were jumping through the wall,
Wow.
trying to kill me with chainsaws. And my father flew out there. Spent. He gave me a credit card for emergencies only, but I said, "Well, crystal is an emergency," so
Right.
I
And
started taking cash advances out on the card at $10,000, and that's 30 years ago.
wow.
And he got my report card and my credit card bill, which was a $10,000 and a 0.00. I went to one class in 5 months. Um, Flew out there. Now, to his defense, my parents were total squares, and the genetic predisposition really came from my grandmother's side, from my mom's side of the family, alcoholism. But my parents didn't use; they didn't drink, so they were just kind of oblivious to what the signs were.
Right.
Even though there were many. And my dad flew out, said, "Can't you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps?" And then 2 weeks later, in my dorm, was at 6:30 in the morning, was pounding on one of my dealer's dorm rooms, screaming at the top of my lungs to open the door, begging him for meth.
Right.
Just sitting there pounding on the door. The RA came out, looked at me, and said, "Are you calling your parents or am I?" Because I'm thin to begin with, but I look like death on a stick.
Right.
Um, I called my mom and I said, "If you don't come out here tomorrow, I'm gonna die." Because I OD'd. I turned purple. I had trouble breathing. Went to the ER.
Wow.
The
From
discharge.
meth?
Yeah,
I say that because you're not the only one. I did the same thing,
really.
but I was by myself. And, people would tell me back then, you can't OD on meth, you can't OD on meth. And I proved them all wrong because I
Yeah.
did such a big amount. I woke up the next morning, and I don't normally share this with people, but I woke up on the floor in my room with a needle sticking out of my arm,
Wow.
not knowing what happened. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my gosh. But anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No.
And, and I think this is good for people out there who are listening that may have a loved one struggling, right? Because you've probably seen it in your career and what you did. I know I have. I mean, I've had so many parents drop off junior or, and go, "We'll be back in 90 days, fix them."
Yeah.
And you're like, I know you have that look like me, probably like, what? No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't. I'm sure for you that brought back some memories, right? My mom, I look back and, she became a black belt in Al-Anon without even having to go to Al-Anon. You know what I mean? Because she kicked me out. You know what I mean? Like she got tired of it, right? And was like, "You're out, like go." I remember the first time she kicked me out. It was like a movie, right? I'm walking around with nowhere to go and it starts raining on me. I cried like a little baby. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this is where my life's going, right? But and I know, I just go, I know what'll fix this, right? And we continue the cycle.
My mom, I came home intoxicated, severely intoxicated, spilled Kool-Aid on the white carpet, the one place where I wasn't allowed to drink Kool-Aid.
Oh, wow.
And I started laughing. And she took everything I owned and threw it in the middle of the street. And because like I said, my father was the enabler.
Right.
And so I knew to stay close to him and away from my mom. My mom was the disciplinarian.
Gotcha.
And so, not to tell a whole drunkalogue, but from 18 to 29, it was, crystal. I came back to Detroit because at that time, meth had not made its way to the Midwest in 1995. So I convinced myself that if I just take pills and I drink Xanax and Valium, Ritalin, or then Adderall, Vicodin, Percocet, then eventually Oxys, whatever, the whole gamut, right?
Right.
And in and out of treatment, um, drug court, sober home, therapy, outpatient, everything that the treatment center industry has to offer.
Right.
But you see, because I grew up in a state of privilege and in a bubble, I thought that the world owed me something. So I had this horrible attitude of entitlement, and I say I needed a rude awakening before I had a spiritual awakening. Right?
Right.
A lot of people have heard that saying, and so finally, I came home from a 3-day crack and alcohol binge, and I was living with my mom. I was 29, living in her basement, setting the world on fire.
Right.
Actually, a girl called my house, and my mom picked up the phone at the same time, and she says, "Do you live with your mom?" I was like, "Oh." Then I started calling girls from payphones.
Yeah.
Right. Just so anyway, came home. My mom looked at me, started sobbing. I weighed 129 pounds. I'm 6'1". And she said, "If you're going to die, it's not going to be in this house. Get out. I'm changing the locks."
Wow.
And I knew that she meant it.
Right.
And even my father, decided to cut me off. And so people say, well, what really changed? It's when my parents took a stand, when they drew a line in the sand.
Right.
Right. And what I'm hearing is that today, one of the things I talk about that was so upsetting is in the Detroit Free Press about 3-4 years ago, it had a 3-page article about a mom who was driving her son to the hood so he could buy dope and then get in the car, shoot up in the car, and then come home. And I was really upset that a major newspaper would publish a story like that.
Right.
Because the mother thought that she was helping her son.
Right. No, I've heard of stories, so many stories like that where they think they're helping, you know what I mean?
So, one of the things I say is that I held my family hostage, everybody. I lied, I manipulated, stole, but most importantly, wasted a lot of precious time of employers. I used to be a TV reporter for ABC.
What?
Yep.
All right.
And
during your addiction, or was
during
this
my addiction, that's my book starts with chapter 1, where I come to work after drinking a half pint of vodka at 7:30 in the morning and taking, I can't remember, maybe 80 or 120 milligrams of Oxy. And I OD'd in the newsroom in front of my coworkers.
Oh, wow.
I was drunk or high every day live on television. And my father got me the job. My father used to own TV and radio stations.
Okay.
And so every job I had, he secured for me. And so why is that a problem? Well, there were so many other, it's so hard to break into television.
Right.
Right. And so not only did I not appreciate the opportunity that kids who were really trying to come up, didn't have my advantage, who really wanted that job, I didn't even want to be there.
Right.
And I just lied. I mean, I made up a story where I told people that I thought I had cancer. I showed them a healthy picture of my esophagus and told them it was probably cancer because I was missing so much work.
Right.
And just, you could go on and on and on with stories like that. Most of the employers, I would come to work with vodka in my orange juice bottle, and my boss would say, "Well, what's in that bottle?" And I'd say, "Don't worry about it." So there's not too many people who can say that to their boss.
Right. I mean, I'm listening to your story, right? And during my heavy use, right, my job was just getting more, right? As you know that, right? Like that was my work, right? For 9 years, I had no work experience because I was doing my thing, as they say, right? And, I could have said I was in sales, right? But I ended up sucking at that because I would do all my product and right. I'd always have to go. But I know, like, you're bringing back memories, and this is what I want the audience to know with addiction, right? Because a lot of people, I mean, you've been probably hit up with it many times as I have, right? Where people goes, well, it's a choice, right? And you just quit. Well, it doesn't work that way, right? When you're in the throes of addiction, like, your choice, you really don't have a choice. I mean, you wake up, that's the first thing on your mind. What am I going to do next, right? And to put it out there, right? I would wake up with whatever I was drinking from the night before and a syringe full of meth, right? Just so I could get up and if I had it, right, to function.
Yeah.
Right. And not all of us, but that place I was telling you I worked at one point, right? Which is in Newport Beach, which I call the land of the rich and shameless, right? Because it's where movie stars live. It's where sports figures live. It's right on the beach, right? So, my first, and I wouldn't say he was privileged, but one of my clients was late to group. So I went to go look for him in the room, and there he was standing by his bed, looking at the bed. I go, well, make your bed. And he goes, wait a minute, don't you do that for me?
That was me.
Right. But this was cool about this kid. I go, no, it's not my job, but I'm going to teach you how. And I taught him how to make it military style because I'm a veteran, right?
Okay.
But in that process, I had a cool encounter with him because he looked at me like seriously and he goes, I've never been taught how to do this. I have people that do this for me. And I was like, wow. Right. And he wasn't like being what you said earlier.
That he didn't feel like the world owed him something.
Right. He was like, cool. And I taught him, and every day after that, he would make his bed. It's like he really wanted to get away. It was weird because he was a kid from privilege, right? Very rich parents. And he didn't act like that. God, I call my kids that, the entitlement. He didn't have that sense about him, right? And he really wanted to kind of like fit in, I guess you would say, with the regular folks, right? But it was very interesting, and he thanked me for teaching him how to make a bed because, I think he stayed sober, and I think just that encounter with him, it's like he wanted to break off and be able to do his own thing, right? And be independent, not have to worry about, hey, I need my bed made, can you come up and make the bed? Like, right? Some of us, like, I don't know about you, but I've slept on the streets, I've slept behind bushes, and, it's not fun, right? But I did kind of get that entitlement, right? When I got sober in my first year, couldn't get a job, right? And everybody's telling me the same thing. Well, we're going to go with another candidate. And I knew why, right? I was a felon, right? I'm not a serious felon. I had no violent, but mine was all drug.
Felon's a felon.
Right. So they're looking at me, right? And back then they were, so, they sent me, the place that I was at would send me to these felon-friendly places. So I don't want to hear an excuse you can't get a job because your new job is to go look for a job until you get one, right?
Right.
And, just because I love where this conversation was going, but I talked to my sponsor one. I go, man, I can't get a job. Like, I don't know what to do. And he goes, go flip burgers. Here's where my entitlement. I go, man, do you know I'm not flipping. Ben, do you know who I am? And he goes, yeah, go flip burgers. And I'm like, oh man, no way. I'm not doing that. I'm not flipping burgers. And he goes, okay, you won't get a job then. And then, but I went home that night and I prayed and I said, okay, God, you've kept me sober for a year. I'll flip burgers if that's what you need me to do. And then that next day I got a call from someone that I applied to, and it was a cool job, right? My very first legit job in over 9 years. And I made okay money. I got back into paying my child support and all that good. It was one of those jobs. It was a get well job, but it made me feel really good because I felt like I got it right until I became willing to do whatever, like flip burgers. God was going to say, you're not going to get one until you become willing, right? And that feeling because I could hear it in your voice, right? The stuff you've been through. So talk about those moments when things started to change for the better, when you, like that moment you went and got sober and talk about from that point forward.
Well, I think that what's important for people to understand is that the consequences were not sufficient to bring me to my knees. It was pain.
Right.
Deep-rooted spiritual pain. I mean, I told you about the consequences. I mean, slammed into a parked F-150 going 60 miles an hour. I OD'd at work so consequences, that didn't do anything for me. And finally, I was ready to die. I wanted to die. And then my family just kind of gave me a little push because I burned every bridge in my life. And I finally went to a men's group. And I say that I had to surround myself with people who were going to tell me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear.
I love it. Yeah.
And so with 21 years of sobriety, there's been a huge shift. And I don't know if it's societal, but also program related. But man, I picked someone to help me who lit me up. And he wasn't yelling at me. He just was very direct.
Yeah.
And, basically he said, I want to know what you get back to this program that saved your life.
Right.
And I said, well, I drove someone to a meeting 3 months ago. And he's like, that's not good enough.
Right.
And I don't like being told what to do. I've always had problems with authority.
Right.
Being expelled from 2 preschools. And so I told him to fuck off. I'm sorry. I told him to F off.
That's all right.
And yeah, I'm trying. I curse, when I go speak, I want to touch on that at the end, but I speak to the, what changed my life is speaking to the state funded treatment centers in Detroit that the guys don't have health insurance. Anyway. And 3 months later, I came to my senses and we reconnected. And I talk about that one conversation, and I say that he cared more about my relationship with a higher power in my program than my feelings. And so for me, it was all about being around men. I did go to mixed meetings, but I had to, women, and that's a big part of my story, is women were a big distraction for me.
Right.
So I don't care who you are. If you go to any kind of recovery meeting and there's a good looking woman that walks in, you are noticing. And if not, you don't have a pulse.
Right. Absolutely.
And so when I took the drugs and alcohol away, that's why when I was in treatment, I didn't do well because I was so fixated on women. And I'm not a fan of dual sex treatment centers where they live so close to each other. That's a whole nother story.
I know you and I can probably do a whole podcast on that subject alone.
So, service is what changed my life. And, I get a lot of stitch videos for my content and hate. And what I discovered was that I was raised in a material world where if I had a 911 and a home and a golf club and all of these material things, that I would be fulfilled. And my biggest fulfillment and what has really saved me from sickness, from some depression, even in sobriety, is getting out of myself to go help someone else. I don't care what you don't have to be an addict. Right. If you're watching porn 3 hours a day, right, then what's helpful? Why don't I cut down to 2 hours a day, and that extra hour I'll go volunteer somewhere?
Correct.
Because that's 1 hour that I'm not hooked on porn.
Right.
So making small adjustments, and my mentor always said, if you want self-esteem, start doing esteemable things.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we both come from the same background when it comes to that, right? Because my sponsor was the same way, and I say that proudly, right? He's been my sponsor for almost 23 years now, but he never yelled at me, suggested, right? But he did it in that's why I call him my Yoda, and everyone in the audience know they've heard me talk about this because he's so calm. And he never has ever raised his voice with me, but he has a way of just, I don't know if it's the reverse psychology, but like I would go into his office. Like one day, I don't talk about this much, but I'm going to lie to him and see if I can get away with it. Right. I just want to see. Right. And I just remember sitting in there across from him, we're talking. I go, here it goes. And then I couldn't even spit it. I couldn't even spit the lie out because I go, he already knows it's coming and I can't do it. And he goes, what's wrong? I go, I was just going to try to lie to you and see if I can get away with it. He goes, but I go, you taught me well. I can't do it because, one of the things he taught me after my last relapse, right, was what you talked about. He goes, that part in our literature that says, I'm responsible, right? When anyone cries out for help, let the hand of, AA be there, and that for that I'm responsible. He goes, you're going to take out the AA and you're going to put anybody, right? And that's where I had my spiritual awakening, is when right? Because before that, I was like, okay, I can look cool. I can be in the room. I can share very cool, right? Because this is where everybody sees me. But behind closed doors, right? And then I was taught, right? Remember, you got to be the same behind closed doors, right? When no one's looking, as if you were in the meetings. And
Well, I always
right.
say recovery takes place when nobody's looking.
Absolutely, right? And it was funny because at that time, before my relapses, I could look good. I could memorize parts from the book, and, I could share really cool. And people were like, wow, this guy's getting it, right? But now it's like, even after, right? If I have to direct you to a part, I have to get the book out and go, okay, this is what you need to read. You know what I mean? With a sponsee or someone. And, God has taken certain things away from me, but then he's also given me, this wonderful life being here with you today, which is, I'm grateful for and honored that you're here, that we get to have this conversation, because you and I know, like, because we have changed so much. People, like, I could show you a picture of my last, mugshot
Yeah.
before, and you go, wow, that looks, that's how I was looking at the end, right? All 130 pounds of me, right? And I'm normally about 180, and, and like you, I was just, and I've heard it, right? And it made sense. I wasn't trying to quit. I wasn't trying to stop. I was trying to control the consequences when they were, but then I realized that's not how it works, right? And like you, I always say, God surrendered me that last time, even though it was one use, one day. That feeling of, right, when I finally realized I'm either going to go to prison for 3 years or I'm going to die doing this. I need help. Okay, God, I'll do whatever you want. And that moment, it was lifted. I haven't had the obsession to drink or use any drugs, and like you, over 20 years. And but I do get to have awesome conversations like this with people in recovery, and even outside of recovery, when I share my story, and talk about what I do. And they're like, wow, man, that's, like, people can't, you and I know that how it controls us. Like, it is like the song from Metallica, Master of Puppets, right? And it's controlling everything we do. But as you got into recovery, right, and started to understand, right, you had that spiritual experience. Like, people don't get it. I didn't have the white light. I just had that moment where I heard God's voice saying, okay, you promised me this. I will keep my promise if you do what you say you're going to do. And you know what I mean? So if I start straying for any reason, I get that little voice. Remember what I said? Yeah, I do. Remember what you said? Okay, cool.
Well, you mentioned when God takes something away, but a lot of times when he takes something away, my life improves eventually.
Absolutely.
But so one of the things that I think that the word trauma has been hijacked. And I talk a lot about that because, first of all, everybody's had trauma. You don't have to be an alcoholic to have had trauma.
True.
And I don't usually talk about, not because I wrote a book, I talk about the therapist who told me, I mean, imagine being 9 years old, him telling you for 9 years that you want to sleep with your mom and what that can do to you emotionally. But what I say is that I used my trauma as a manipulation. I hit below the belt. I said things to my parents and used my trauma. Like, you left the family, you left me with that therapist and they were not wise to the game, that I was playing a game that they were unfamiliar with.
Right.
But as an addict and an alcoholic, I will say or do anything to keep my addiction going. And at some point, I have to be accountable, just accept my past for what it was. There's plenty of therapy. There's EMDR. I'm sure to anybody out there, there's CBT, DBT, all different types of modalities today that they didn't have back then. So at some point, I have to, say, all right, I'm 50 years old. I have to stop driving drunk every day and putting other people's lives in danger.
Right.
And
True.
become accountable. And so trauma is important and it needs to be dealt with. But if I keep screwing up and doing the same things, everybody gets sick of that story.
Right.
And so that's something that, like you said, the man who helped you, well, and the man who helped me, they told us the truth.
Yep.
And
Well,
everybody wants to hear the truth until it's about their situation.
right.
Um, and so when I had my practice, um, boundaries are, as you know, working in the industry. I mean, some of these families could not keep this most simple boundaries,
Yeah.
that are life-saving boundaries.
Right.
Um, and so I just said, you know what, I want to write this book and share my story, and maybe I can help. Maybe if someone just takes a step back and reads what I have to say
Right.
instead of me sitting in their living room, maybe they'll digest it differently. But so that's really what it's about. I got sober because I was a boy whose father was paying all of his bills.
Right.
And at 29 years old, I was still a boy, and I
Right.
felt very insecure on the inside, and I had to become a man. And what does that mean? It means being responsible,
Right.
getting a job, not
Yep.
taking advantage of people. How about getting out of myself to help someone else? And I want to touch on something, because I've had the blessing of working with um, men suffering from schizophrenia and bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
And so there's one story that really sticks out. One of my a man who was trying to help someone who was suffering from bipolar disorder. He was a chronic relapser, and he strongly suggested that this young man get 2 service positions, one on a Sunday night and one on a Tuesday night. And he hasn't had a drink in 5 years now.
I love it.
And so it's not a coincidence. And
No.
so people have seen his disposition change dramatically, right? And I'm not advocating to take medication away. I'd never do that. Whatever
Right.
you choose to do and be on, you do it. But
Right.
if you go help someone else, and that's what if a takeaway for me is, if you're suffering, go help someone else.
Right.
Right. And you know that the people who have, and even I talk about atheists, right? And one of a good friend of mine who is a staunch atheist, right? Uh, has been clean from heroin for 33 years. He does not believe in God. We have very different opinions, but he has been taking a meeting into a treatment center twice a month for 33 years.
Wow.
Now, think about that kind of commitment.
Right.
So he can say that. That's why I say that for the people who are really struggling with the concept of God, that service, like there's no excuse to not try to help someone else.
Right.
Right. And truth be told, when I was in my practice and they'd say, I don't believe in God. And I said, you know what? You don't have to. Why don't you meet me at the soup kitchen and we'll make coffee, or we'll pass out sandwiches, or we'll be a greeter. Whatever it is, whatever program, whatever it is. And when they say they don't want to do that, well, now that we know they're full of shit,
Right. I love it. Yep.
can't we just cut to the chase?
Right.
Right? Like, dude, just be honest. It's okay. I didn't want to do anything.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do service. I didn't want to unfold chairs. I remember emptying ashtrays
Yeah.
back when you could smoke in meetings.
Yeah. Even outside, you have to, I was a butt can cleaner, you know what I mean? Throwing the butts away.
But let's just be honest. There's this whole thing of, oh, well, they're not getting what they need from treatment. Well, I didn't deserve to be in treatment. I was disrespectful. I was not courteous. I didn't want to be there. And I was disruptive. And, I think some people need to be sent home sometimes. That's not happening.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you and I know things have changed in the addiction field,
yeah.
some of it for the worse. And yeah, we'll have a talk after the podcast about that. But
So, and then just, prayer. I don't think there's any right way to pray. I think the only wrong way is to not try it at all.
that's
It
what I was
doesn't
told.
matter. I get on my knees. I strongly suggest, and as someone who grew up as a religious Jew, the fact that I get on because Jewish people traditionally don't kneel. That's Catholic people
Right.
kneel, and so all the things I said I would never do are the things that saved my life. Now,
Right.
isn't that funny how that works?
Absolutely. Right. And, I think I'm glad you're talking about service work, right? Because it's, as you can tell, right, we're two people with over 40 years of sobriety between us, right? And the key element there between the two of us is our service work, right? My first 3 years back after my last relapse, I was in a meeting every day, twice a day, and I had probably a commitment in each one of those meetings, right? Because I knew that's what I had to do. And I'm not saying everybody else got to do what I did, but
Right.
it taught me something very important, right? Because when I was in those meetings and I saw someone who was having a rough time, right? I could go over there and go, hey, how can I help? Right? Do you need a cigarette? Do you need someone to talk to? Right. And that's where, like, I love my mentor, my sponsor so much for it, because he goes, I don't care who it is. Right. You might be at the store. It may be some stranger. Right. Open that door for the stranger or whatever you need to do. And just the whole thing of getting outside of yourself, because we know when we're in our addiction, we are the most selfish people on the planet. Right. Because
And the
we don't
thing is,
care.
you may not even want to show up and do it, but if you do, you may save someone's life and not even know it.
Well, how many times have you done that at a meeting where you shared something and someone come up to you and go, Matt, you just saved my life?
But then I got to a point where all the blessings came back in my life, and then I stopped shaking people's hands. And I realized that I had a responsibility to go up to someone who's new and looks lost. And
Yeah.
that's a whole something else that I talk about. I want to inspire people who stopped coming to come back, because
Yeah.
men, and I know we're short on time, but there's a guy named Scott Galloway. I don't know if you've seen any of his podcasts, but he said if you go to the morgue, 4 out of 5 suicides are young men in this country.
Yeah.
And
right. It's
men are
unfortunate.
falling through the cracks. And I believe that I was spared. I have a responsibility, not only as someone who has everything's been given to me my whole life. I didn't earn anything. So I feel like I have a tremendous responsibility to be a beacon of hope for someone not only trying to get sober, but how about who doesn't have a family, a driver's license, they're a felon, they can't even afford a sober home, right? Like that's what drives me, is to try to help men who are falling through the cracks. I call them the forgotten ones,
Right.
the ones that society, right? If they're not Matthew Perry, then no one cares, right?
Right.
And so that's what really lights me up.
Right. And that's what's sad, right? Because we've seen that side, right? If you don't have some kind of pull or, right, some status, right? All those men behind that get lost in the shuffle, like you said, right? And I almost felt like that, right? Because, you know what I mean? And it was weird because I was in a place that had parolees and probationers, right? But I felt like if I wasn't on parole, right? Because the owner had this special thing for all the parolees. Plus, he was making a ton of money, right? Which I would find out later, right? Through some of the programs. But it was like, if you weren't one of those guys, but at the same time, I have to thank that guy. He's sober again. He's doing a good job now, I hear. But his structure, right? Like that, what we needed in the beginning, like saved my life. And my sponsor would always remind me, because you don't have to like him. But think about the structure he provided for you that, right, brought us together and got you sober, and you know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And I'm along the lines with you too on that. Like, I want to help those forgotten people. I don't care who it is, but the ones that, because they may be homeless, and society looks down, oh, there's just another drug addict or another alcoholic, right? Those are the people. Or, in my case too, I like the people that are maybe of privilege, or, you know what I mean, or worked their way and built a big company or high performers.
Well, I'll send them to you.
Right. What I mean by
I'm
that,
not
though,
kidding.
the ones that are scared because of how they might look, and you know what I mean? They might not go on Facebook and say, but truly want the help, but, need discretion or whatever, right? Because they have a lot to lose. But, I have met a lot of people like that are very humble, right? That were humbled by our disease, right? And they're like, man, like, teach me what you did, because I don't know what to do, right? Because I have to keep this running over here. But if I don't do all this, I can't do it, right? And I go, yeah, you can. You just have to. But anyway, you and I could spend another couple of hours talking about that stuff.
Yeah.
But and I want to bring you back, right? And we'll dive into your book more, right? Because we need books like yours where
it's very raw,
right? Very raw, but it can give the loved ones, I like to say the loved ones, whether it's mom, dad, husband, wife, that insight on what to look for, because we are very good at what we do when we're in our disease and manipulating people. We can make you feel like that big when we need to.
August 11th is the publishing date. So,
Awesome.
uh,
Well, let me ask you these questions and then I'll get into that, like where they can find it and all that, and
Okay.
you and all that. But I'm going to start with fearless, right? Because, you and I, when we look back, we were full of fear, right? So this is why I named the podcast the way I did. So fearless, what does fearless mean to you today, Matt? And how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
fearless means having ultimate faith in some kind of higher power, which I choose to call God. And I ask God every morning to let me live in faith rather than fear,
Yeah.
rather than the paralyzing fear that I had and that I lived with, and to do things that maybe make me uncomfortable, or that I'm afraid to do, but do it anyway.
Right.
So fearless is, I'll tell you what fearless means to me. When I was 16 years sober, I got really sick with COVID. And it triggered fibromyalgia, and I've had a tremendous amount of health problems over the years.
Okay.
And that's what I say is there's going to come a point, people say, well, meetings, this, that, hiking, but what happens when you become chronically ill and you can't do anything except stay at home and try to get better?
Right.
One of the best things I heard is that eventually, the only thing standing between me and a drink was God, because I wanted to die again from the chronic pain that I was living in. I feel terrible for people who have chronic pain in sobriety.
Right.
And so and then I doubled down. My faith in God even became stronger, because I said, you know what, I'm going to demonstrate, and I'm going to show the newcomers. I want to demonstrate to the people who are new in recovery that you can go through anything and come out on the other side. A death of a son, one of my best friend's son was murdered, and he didn't go back out. One of my friends lost his wife and son in the same year, and he didn't go back out. And what those guys talk about is having faith in something in the universe.
Yep.
One guy liked the St. Francis prayer.
I love it.
Someone else believed in the universe. I guess my point is that they had a belief system and they had faith in something. And in my experience in 21 years and 10,000 hours of working in the field, the people who have had some kind of faith in something have fared much better than the people who don't believe in anything.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you 100%.
And
More.
I'm not, I hope, some people, I'm not trying to sound like a preacher. I'm just trying to share my experience that there's going to come a time in your life when the shit hits the fan. Cancer, terminal cancer. I had a guy once say, he just came to meetings and said, okay, God, what am I supposed to learn today? He never complained once. So I feel that these stories are not as represented, enough of them, as it should be. I think that there's a misunderstanding that we're these fragile relapse machines.
Right.
That if you turn on these movies and televisions, the way that they portray recovery is not even remotely close to what brave men and women are doing when they have faith that's behind them.
And we'll talk about that after that's perfect. I love that. Right. Let's go to the next question.
Okay.
Happiness, right? Seeing I put a Y in happiness, going through what you've been through in your addiction and even in sobriety, right? All the challenges that come with life in general. What does happiness mean to you today? And how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
100% is service. When my father died, and this is really important because I want people to listen. I will never say that money is not good, right? Money provides security.
Right.
It's very important. Health insurance, healthcare stuff, right? Money is essential. However, when I was 11 years sober, I bought, actually 13 years, sorry. I bought a brand new 911 Porsche, my dream car.
Right.
I bought a house. I joined a country club. I bought a Rolex and started traveling. And I thought to myself that I have now surrounded myself what society tells me is going to make me feel good.
Right.
And I don't know whether it's because I'm an alcoholic or someone who already had some recovery, but 8 months into owning the car, I sold it. It did absolutely nothing for me. Again, I'm not hating on 911s,
Right.
but happiness to me looks like, and again, what changed my life, even at 14 years of sobriety, I started volunteering at a woman's shelter for women who have been sex trafficked and abused, who come from the worst stories that you've ever heard.
Oof.
It reinvigorated my happiness. I felt plugged in. It changed my perspective because I was always comparing myself to someone, what someone had on their plate,
Right.
comparing myself, the home, the car. And I can just tell you that being of service to others provides me with the greatest amount of happiness.
I love it. I love it. I couldn't agree. Again, like I said, I agree with you so much on all that. Like, I mean, you just told my story, right? But service, that's ultimately right. And I even tell a funny story, right? Like when I worked in that hospital in Newport Beach, my mom lived in a town which without traffic was 45 minutes away, right? But in California, the traffic on the freeways at 5 o'clock.
405 and the
Yeah. So I had to take the 55 to the 57, which would be a 2-hour trip, right? And I love telling this story because it's funny, right? But I got to do it, right? That was one of my living amends, and two, what we're talking about is being of service, right? My mom calls me at 4:30 in the afternoon, right? What are you doing? Oh, I'm working. And I know it's coming. She goes, can you come over? I can't fit, the TV's not working right. And right. I'm like, yeah, mom, I'll be there. Right. Don't argue. I get on the freeway and I'm cussing her out the whole time there. Right. God, I can't believe you made me come. Right.
Everybody has a mom. Yeah.
I get to her house. Right. And she's like, hi, the TV works. I fixed it. Right. But I don't let her know that I cussed her out all the way. I just give her a hug and a kiss. Oh, cool, mommy. And she goes, yeah, you want to go out to dinner and get something to eat? And I said, I just had to laugh. And I go, Mom, if you just want me to come over to take you out to dinner, just tell me. I go, you don't have to tell me. She goes, no, really, the TV didn't work. Right. And I'm like, but I think about those things. Right. And what a gift that was for me to get to do that after all those years of, being let's say a shitty son. Right. And her having to tell me my last time in jail, if you come near my home, I'm going to call the cops. And if my neighbors see you, they're going to call the cops. So what are you going to do? Right. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know. Right. But, this has been such a great time and I can't wait to get your book. Right. I'm going to go pre-order it. And so that when you come on again, we can talk about that. And I think it's going to be an eye opener for people and things that I've been preaching about, in this field for many years. But so again, remind the audience, I always like to ask, first, where can they get your book, right? And if they have questions for you, right? Like, hey, I have a family member struggling and what can I do, Matt? How does my audience get a hold of you?
Yeah, so my website is mattgrace.com. My email is hello@mattgrace.com. Now, I'm still finessing the landing page and I'm working on so people can try to contact me and it will be easier to get a hold of. So eventually my contact page will be more functional.
Right.
But there's an about me, a bio, and all that stuff. And so there's certain links on my website, Barnes & Nobles and Amazon, or you can go to Amazon and Barnes & Nobles, Books A Million, and it's called God Doesn't Relapse.
Okay, I love it. Well, this has been a great time, Matt. I loved it every minute. You're bringing back memories for me, both good and bad when I'm thinking about my addiction, but the good, which mostly good, right? Talking like how you found your spiritual experience, how it came to you and what it's doing for you today. And you know what I mean? Like we have a lot of similarities but you're not quite off the hook just yet. Right. So I have my last and favorite question that I ask of all my guests, and it goes like this. So Matt, what is the one piece of advice you could give my audience to help them grow as human beings and become better people?
Yeah, I have two things. One, connect to something that you're passionate about. It doesn't have to be recovery based. A soup kitchen, some kind of charity, anything to strike a balance in your life of all the fun you want to have. If you want to be super successful, just cut out a couple hours, 3 hours a month to try to be of service in something that you're passionate about or something that you care about. And lastly, prayer. Right? If you're struggling, um, I know how it's so cliche, but if you would
It
have ever
works.
told me that getting on my knees, I used to say that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. My life, I'm a crackhead,
Right.
right? I'm just a disaster. Like, how is getting on my knees going to change my life? And so, if you don't want to get on your knees, I completely understand that to pray, but incorporate some form of prayer, whether it's meditation, whether it's yoga, sound
Yeah.
bath. I mean, there's so many different things that you can connect with, but try to tap into some form of prayer and higher power.
I love it. I won't disagree with that. Matter of fact, I approve that message. I love it.
Oh, so
Well, man,
I don't fail, do I?
no, this
All
has been
right.
an awesome time. I've had so much fun with you and listening to your story and what you're doing and how you're trying to, like me, break that stigma and, help the other side. When I call the other side, that one you and I agree on, like the enabler side, like how we can change that so that there is better outcomes, whether at a treatment center or, right. One thing about that hospital I told you I worked with, they had a 4-day family week, right?
Oh, that's
And
really good.
yeah, and it's a model I love because I saw so much success where the loved ones, got to hear their side, but then the patient got to hear what they did, right? And they couldn't, it was just the way they did it. It's amazing and it's still going strong. They've been doing this for, I want to say 30 plus years now, right? But I'm grateful because it's led me to conversations like this with you, right? Like what we do, our service work. So I appreciate you being there. You heard him, everybody. If Matt made you think, if Matt taught you something, if Matt made you smile, and my famous, if Matt made you go, I like that. Please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review or come join me on my new YouTube channel where you actually get to see Matt and I have this awesome conversation. And again, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. Until next time.
Are you tired of being weighed down by life's traumas and struggles? Join the Fearless Happiness lifestyle and let us guide you toward a brighter future. Explore our past podcast episodes and get a copy of the Fearless Happiness book to ignite your inner strength. If you or someone you love is battling addiction or facing challenges related to unresolved trauma, know that we are here for you. Visit maxnajst.org, maxnijst.org, and take the first steps toward finding your fearless happiness. Thank you for listening. This has been a production of Fearless Happiness.